Everyone, Merhaba. I'm very pleased to welcome you to actually the first in-person, it's a hybrid event this academic year, believe it or not, but we are finally able to get together at least partially in person. So I'd like to welcome both attendees who are here, physically present, as well as those who are connecting remotely. I'm Vlad Tarabar. I'm newly appointed Director of Center for European, Russian, and Asian Studies. Norm Graham, my mentor in this capacity, will be joining us later. His assignment. I'd like to say a few introductory words. I'd like to introduce the speaker, Mehmet Eroğlu. He's a first-year Ph.D. student in the Department of Geography, Environment and Spatial Sciences at Michigan State. He's a Fulbright scholar, originally from Turkey. He is here pursuing his PhD in the geography program in that department. His undergraduate degree, as well as MS degree, is from Istanbul Technical University in Turkey, where he specialized first in geomatics and then in science, technology, and policy. And today, Mehmet will give us an update on his ongoing research that's dedicated to political geography of coal mine cities and how they cope with the change in the industry. And of course, he'll provide much more detail on that. The city of interest will be Zonguldak, which is northwest of Turkey, Black Sea coast. Welcome, Mehmet. Welcome, everyone. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Vlad, for this kind introduction. Let me first share my screen. It's okay, can you see my screen and can you hear me well? Okay, perfect. Okay, hello everyone, good afternoon. It's very nice to see some familiar faces and some familiar names on Zoom. Again, my name is Mehmet Eroğlu. I'm a first-year PhD student in the Department of Geography, Environment, and Spatial Sciences at Michigan State University. Today, I will be talking about my research that focused on the city of Zonguldak, the historical coal extraction center of Turkey. As you can see here, my title is Making and Unmaking a Mining City, the Historical Geography of Zonguldak. Before I start, Before I start, let me acknowledge some institutions that support my research. First of all, I would like to thank Center for European, Russian, and Eurasian Studies for organizing this event and for supporting my research. I would like to thank Muslim Studies program and of course my Department of Geography, Environment, and Spatial Sciences. Also, I'm a Fulbright scholar, so all my studies, including this one, are supported by Fulbright program, so I thank them. Here is the structure of today's talk. I will start with the introduction and then share the conceptual framework very briefly. Then our main focus, the real topic, will be on the historical geography of Zonguldak, and I will examine this historical process in 4 main sections. First, the Ottoman period, the discovery of coal and the initial formation of the coal basin. Then early Republican periods between 1920s and 1940s, and the rise of the city of Zonguldak, which refers to the significant state investments between 1950s and 1970s, and finally, fall of the city of Zonguldak in relation to the neoliberalization in Turkey in the post-1980 period. Well, I think Mary is unmuted, so I hear her. Oh, can I just unmute her? Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. So in relation to my title, Making and Unmaking a Second. Okay. I think I'm close. Maybe I can unmute her. Yeah, no, I can't. Should I continue? I think, okay, let's continue. Okay, in relation to my title, Making and Unmaking a Mining State, the first three sections, Ottoman period, early Republican period, and the rise of the city of Zonguldak, refer to the making of a mining city. And the final section is about unmaking of a mining city. Okay. So then before I finish, okay, I think we are good now. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, before I finish, I will share my concluding remarks. I plan to finish my presentation in about 45 minutes. So thank you for your patience in advance. And our total time for this talk is 1.5 hours. Of course, we don't have to use all of it, but I just want to say we will have enough time for your questions, comments, or contributions in general. Okay, let's start. Again, my case study, the city I am working on is called Zonguldak. To give you a general sense of place, here is Zonguldak. It's on the western Black Sea coast of Anatolia, Turkey. And today the population is about 600,000 in Zonguldak. And before coal mining started in 1840s, Zonguldak was only a small village. But with the discovery of coal, with the formation of the basin, Zonguldak became a mining town in a few decades. So as Donald Cotter says, he's one of the most prominent Ottoman labor historians, Zonguldak owes its very existence to opening of the coal mines. So what do I want to do with Zonguldak? Why do I study Zonguldak? What's my aim? Well, my goal is to reveal and discuss the spatial and social transformation of Zonguldak from 1840s to present day. I want to explore the change of Zonguldak as a place, the change of people living or working in Zonguldak as a community, and the relationship between these two. So this is my aim. And the second question is, why do I study Zonguldak? Why is this my case study? There are several reasons, but first, I mean, it's interesting to see formation and transformation of a city and its community throughout history. How did this city emerge? How and what type of community was formed there? And secondly, in relation to the first one, the rise and fall of Zonguldak did not happen in a vacuum. Of course, it happened in relation to political and social transformations in the world and in Turkey as well. I mean, I do not intend to explain the entire world history through Zonguldak, but I want to locate Zonguldak in a broader political and social context. And as a final reason, right now there's an ongoing debate over the use of coal, because coal is the most harmful fossil fuel for the environment and public health. So historical mining cities such as Zonguldak are at the center of these discussions. If we reduce or completely phase out our coal consumption, how do we ensure a just transition in these cities? What alternatives could be offered to the people, thousands of people working in mining or mine-related jobs? So I think it's important to consider these mining cities in their historical context. So that's why I want to study Zonguldak. Okay, conceptual framework. Again, I don't want to spend too much time with conceptual framework. I just want to share some useful tools, useful conceptual tools. If you are interested, we can talk about them later in the Q&A session. The first one is socio-technical imaginaries, which basically refers to the co-production of energy technologies and social life. For Zonguldak, this concept means that development of coal industry, development of coal technologies in Zonguldak has affected society by creating a collective identity in the city in relation to coal. And in turn, the coal industry, coal technologies are shaped by this collective identity. Secondly, identity and place studies. These studies focus on how the identity building of individuals is related to where they live or work. For Zonguldak, like every city, people are affected by the formation and transformation of the place. The third one is state-society relations. I'm going to use James Scott's state-society relations analysis, especially his book, Seeing Like a State. Scott questions why state projects that like genuinely try to solve some problems or genuinely try to make people's lives better often fail. And Scott says that the main reason is that big state projects with their ultra high modernist ideologies cannot capture the informal practices in life. So this is the reason. And based on this analysis, we can have a better understanding of why Ottoman Empire and Republic of Turkey many times failed in their projects regarding Zonguldak. And finally, spatial divisions of labor. This concept refers to how global capitalism causes different economic activities, social relations, and power hierarchies in different geographies. It doesn't mean that global capitalism determines everything, so it doesn't ignore national or local parameters, but it says in our globalized world, we cannot understand spatial and social transformations if we ignore global economic trends. So our first period is the Ottoman Empire period, late Ottoman Empire period, actually. Again, before coal mining began in 1840s, Zonguldak was a very small village with a very low population, and everything changed with the opening of mines. In the beginning, all mines were considered the property of Ottoman Sultan, but local or foreign individuals, the companies, some subjects were leasing operating rights of the coal mines. But there was a very critical condition. The mine owners, the mine operators actually, had to sell all the coal they extracted to the Ottoman Navy at a fixed price. Because for the Ottoman Empire, for the Ottoman government, Zonguldak coal should be the energy source for their developing Navy. So there was no free market in the beginning. And another important thing is there was not enough coal production in the beginning, and the reason was the labor shortage. Because villagers around Zonguldak had no idea about coal mining and they didn't want to work in the mines. So as a common practice in Ottoman mining, many people came to the region, came to Zonguldak from different regions such as like Balkans, Eastern Black Sea, or Eastern Anatolia, and they started working there, but apparently that was not enough. So in 1895, Ottoman Empire made a decision, and they gave the administration of the basin to the Ottoman Navy, so that Ottoman Navy could take the coal directly. And in the same year, Dilaver Pasha, you can see Dilaver Pasha here, okay, became he was a very high-ranking ministry official, money ministry official. He became the district governor and also the mining minister in the region. And in 2 years, in 1867, Dilaver Pasha introduced new regulations in Zonguldak. And now, with Dilaver Pasha regulations, every male villager between the age of 13 and 50 living around Zonguldak in 14 districts around Zonguldak has to work in the mines. So it was compulsory forced labor. These regulations also define 3 types of workers: Kazmaciyan, those who dig the coal; Küfeciyan, those who carry the coal with their baskets; and Kiraciyan, those who carry the coal with their animals. So in addition to being forced labor, their labor was also rotational. For example, carriers, they were working 12 days in mines. They were spending 12 days in their villages, and they were using the other 6 days of the month to travel between their villages and mines. So they became, again, what Donald Cottard calls a villager miner. So they developed a different kind of identity. They were not just villagers, they were not miners, they were villager miners. Here you can see some old miners from Zonguldak. You can see a digger and the basket carrier, and you can see the workers, miners with their animal. So Dilaver Pasha regulations changed lots of things in Zonguldak. And the main thing is, after Dilaver Pasha regulations, we saw 2 main groups of workers. On the one hand, there was the local villagers as compulsory and rotational labor. And since they were rotationally working, they were mostly given jobs in underground mines because they were unskilled labor. They were not professional miners. On the other hand, there were migrant Ottomans, people who came to the region from different regions, and they were working full-time. They were free labor, they were not compulsory labor, and they were skilled jobs, so they were working in overground jobs, like they were working in the construction of ports or railways or this kind of things. So the main thing is that the mining community in Zonguldak was not homogeneous. There were differences in terms of job description and working conditions. Again, Dilaver Pasha regulations changed lots of things, but Ottoman coal policy, which was selling all the coal to the Navy, was still same. And as you can imagine, mine owners were not happy with that, not at all, because they want to sell the coal on free market because they thought they could make more money. And finally, in 1882, Ottoman government changed that rule, and and now companies, they were still required to sell 60% of their coal production to the Ottoman Navy, but they could sell 40% of their coal production on the free market. And this decision had two interrelated consequences. First of all, very big companies came to the region and they monopolized the region. By 1893, 4 large companies were making almost 75% of the total production in Zonguldak. Secondly, coal production, as you can see here, increased dramatically. In 1882, total coal extraction was 65,000 tons. And when we came to 1911, it was about 900,000 tons. By the way, you can see also the Republican period here. Republican period in Turkey starts in 1923. So the increase continued during the Republican period as well. And there is only one decrease period. And as you can see, it is during World War I. This is as a side note for the next section. And at this time, as I said, there were now big companies in Zonguldak, big capitals. And the biggest company was French capital, Ereğli Coal Company. Let me also mention this. In the beginning, the basin was called Ereğli Coal Basin because Ereğli right now is a district of Zonguldak, was an older settlement than Zonguldak. As I said, Zonguldak was a very small village. So in the beginning, people called the place Ereğli Coal Basin, but the city developed around Zonguldak and it became Zonguldak Coal Basin. That's why I always use Zonguldak Coal Basin, not to just make a confusion, but in the beginning, it was Ereğli Coal Basin. Anyway, the biggest company in Zonguldak at the time was French Ereğli Coal Company. It was established in 1896, and after 6 years in 1902, in this year, they were producing 80% of the total coal production in Zonguldak. And this company was really effective in turning Zonguldak into a mining city because they built factories, coal washers, railways, roads, houses, hospitals, and even a port in Zonguldak. Of course, their aim was to make coal production more efficient, but they changed the city with their investments. In fact, there were so many French officials in the basin. So the company also built a neighborhood called French Quarter with like relatively modern houses, schools, and a church. In 1899, the Zonguldak became really important for France, and the France appointed an ambassador to Zonguldak, but Zonguldak was still officially a village. So Ottoman Empire understood the political importance of Zonguldak, and in that year, in 1899, Zonguldak became a district officially. By the way, the officials of Ereğli Coal Company, they were sending so many pictures to France, and that's how they were sending cards actually. So that's how I could find some pictures of Zonguldak from the late 19th and early 20th century. Now let me show you some of those pictures. So we can see the spatial change. Let me again remind you, like Zonguldak was a very small village before 1840s. And all those things happened with the discovery of coal. So you can see here a brick factory. You can see that the bridge here, and they carry the coal. You can see coke furnaces, and those pictures were taken between 1880 and 1893. Exact date is not known. Here you can see coal preparation plants, and those were used. They still exist in Zonguldak, most of them, I guess, because you need to process the coal. And when I say processing, it's basically washing the coal, because when you extract the coal is covered with dirt and other things, so you have to wash it to make it more efficient. And those coal preparation plants were established in the region. You can see the Zonguldak port that was established by Eroğlu Coal Company, and you can see the crane on the right. This crane also belonged to Eroğlu Coal Company. Zonguldak streets with railways. This is a very famous thing because you need to transport the coal. So all Zonguldak main streets were with railways. Factories in Zonguldak. The companies also improved mechanization in Zonguldak to make, again, mining more efficient, or at least transportation more efficient. On the left, you can see an aerial cable at Gelik mine. Gelik is one of the most famous mines. And on the right, you can see a mechanism, and it was used to put coal into ships. And meanwhile, of course, a mining community was forming in Zonguldak. You can see some miners and some officials on the left, Gelik mine, and on the right, Üzülmez mines. Again, Gelik and Üzülmez, they were the most important mines in Zonguldak. As I said, with the Laverpasha regulations, everything changed, and the working age was between 13 and 50. So there were child workers at the Zonguldak mines. So you can see them here. Okay, all in all, by the late 1910s, Zonguldak, once a very small village, was a coal mining town with its pits, ports, worker houses, hospitals, and so on. In the 1850s, the total number of miners was 500. In the 1910s, it was about 10,000. And the majority of miners were Muslims, but there were different nationalities and ethnic groups in different roles, such as Turks, Kurds, Croatians, Montenegrins, Greeks, Armenians, French, Italians, and British. So that's the end of the Ottoman period. Now we can continue with the Republican periods. As a short background for those who are not familiar with the political history of Turkey, after World War I ended with the defeat of Ottoman Empire, Mustafa Kemal and others started the War of Independence in 1919. And with the victory of the War of Independence, they abolished the Sultanate in 1922 and proclaimed the Republic of Turkey in 1923. And Mustafa Kemal, who was the leader of Independence War, became the first president of the Republic of Turkey. So the new government, the new system in Turkey took great interest in Zonguldak from the very beginning. First of all, they officially repealed the Laverpasha regulations. I mean, those regulations were not that effective anyway, but at least it was official now. And they made the minimum working age 18 and the daily working time 8 hours. So they adopted a more modern approach to the working conditions. Also, in 1924, so 1 year after the establishment of Republic, they made Zonguldak a city, and Zonguldak became the first city declared in the Republican period. And all those things happened because early Republic was considering Zonguldak the energy source for their modernization and industrialization project. But 1930s was a period of economic depression all over the world, and countries were adopting more statist economic policies, and the government in Turkey did the same thing. Starting from 1936, the state began to expropriate the basin. So in 1937, the government bought the Eroğlu Coal Company, which was still the biggest company, the French company. And by 1940, the nationalization of the coal field was totally completed. So the state became the sole owner of the Zonguldak mines and the employer of everyone working in the Zonguldak mines, and it stayed like that until 1980s. Okay. So you remember the labor pressure regulations were introduced because of the labor shortage. And in the 1930s, this problem was still present in Zonguldak. The state could not find enough people to work in the mines. So 1940 witnessed a very significant change in Zonguldak. In January 1940, the national protection law was declared by the government under World War II condition. I mean, even though Turkey did not enter the war until the very end, the government was saying that it was necessary to take precautions and increase the production, just in case. And this law, national protection law, state that industrial and mining workers are subjected to forced labor again. Also, with this law, the working age in the mines was reduced to 16. You remember in labor pressure regulations, it was 13, and the new government made it 18, and now it was, it says 17 here, but it should be 16, sorry about that. So now it was 16, and the daily working hours became 11 hours by a 3 hours increase. After 1 month, an additional decree was issued directly for the Zonguldak Basin. Now, any citizen living in and around Zonguldak who has experience working in the mines, who come from a miner family and who are currently unemployed, had to work in the mines. So in 1940, basically, the second period of forced labor officially began in Zonguldak and lasted for 7 years. Even today, this period, the second period of compulsory labor, second period of forced labor, is remembered with unhealthy and risky working conditions, long working hours, low wages, hunger, disease, and accidents. There was no organized opposition by the workers, but as I will show in a minute, the miners were escaping individually from the mine, so that was their reaction. And the government was trying to find a solution because it became a huge issue between miners and government. And finally, government sent soldiers to the region and gave all miners a soldier status, so that like if they escape, they will be regarded as national betrayers because they were escaping from the military job. Now I'm going to show some quotes from people who work in Zonguldak mines at the time. The first one is from Nikos and Kahveci's work. They told the former miner. Let me read this real quick. I cannot see. Okay. In 1940, because of the mükellefiyet, which means forced labor, I started working in the mines. I was a tirkacı, which means transport worker. I put the coal in a container to take it to shoot. In the pit, the air ventilation was worked by hands. It was very hot, and the air was clouded. We worked almost naked. I was so miserable that I escaped after the first week. I went to my village to hide. After 2 days, 6 gendarmes came. They couldn't find me. Instead of me, they took my wife to their headquarters. They only released her when I gave myself up. Sometimes they even took babies. They tortured people. When they captured people who escaped from the mines, they beat them. The second one is from Can Nacar's work. He talks about Şuayb Özenç, and again, another former miner. Let me read. Şuayb Özenç was a locomotive driver in the Ereğli coal press. He disregarded the measly wage work and did not go to work on 1 September 1943. He told the gendarmes that he did not want to work and that he would run away even if they captured him. Although gendarmes brought him back to work, he escaped 3 days later and began to work in Karabük. Karabük was a district of Zonguldak back then. In October 1943, gendarmes again captured him. However, while he was being transported to the roadworks where he had been set to work as a punishment, he jumped off the train and escaped once again. In July 1944, officials in the press learned that he was working at the railway administration's Chankırı depot. So that was the basic reaction by workers. They were just trying to escape. Another one from İrfan Yalçın's book, he also told the former miner, and the miner says, we were not worth as much as an animal or a tool. A mule with a broken leg or a lost pickaxe would upset them managers more than our debt. It's because the mules were scarce and pickaxes and shovels were limited. But as for us, we were as many as ants. The compulsory labor period, the forced labor period, can also be seen in Turkish fiction. Here you see two novels from Turkey, two Turkish novels. On the left, Ölümün Ağzı, which means Death's Mouth by İrfan Yalçın, and Death's Mouth refers to the entrance of mines. And you can see a soldier and a miner on the cover. And on the right, you see Yanartaş by Mehmet Seyda, and Yanartaş means burning rock, basically, and it also refers to coal. And this book is like 2 volumes book. It's also about the second forced labor period of in Zonguldak. Okay, now we reach 1950s. Again, let me give you a short background. Republic of Turkey was established in 1923, and until 1950, the Republican People's Party, Mustafa Kemal's party, was in power. But there was an election in 1950, and the Democrat Party, main opposition party, won this election in Turkey in general, but also in Zonguldak. Overall, the new government and the following governments in 1960s had a more liberal economic agenda instead of a statist one. It was also, the new economic turn in the world. It was not just about Turkey, but they kept Zonguldak coalfield under state ownership. And between 1950 and 1965, the state made huge investments in Zonguldak. And when I say investments, it was not only about mining. I mean, that was also huge. That they bought new underground and overground equipment, opened new pits, and made the railways better, and so on. But also state company actually opened new private schools, movie theaters, campsites, private beaches for miners and their families. And they also established dormitories for rotational workers. By the way, rotational workers were still there. I mean, that practice was continuing at the time. Also during that period, between 1950s and 1960s, especially in the second half of 1960s, several factories were opened in and around Zonguldak, and that region became the industrial center of Turkey. And especially Zonguldak, with all these social policies, turned into a state-owned company town. And between 1950s and 1970s, with all these investments, the population, the number of miners, and coal production dramatically increased in Zonguldak. I'm not going to show these numbers right now because I want to show them and I want to discuss them in the next section, the fall of Zonguldak, so we can see how these things first increase and then decrease. Along with all these social and economic transformations, of course, the 1960s were the years of political transformations in Europe, in Turkey, and inevitably in Zonguldak. Workers and students movements were becoming widespread in the country and the city of Zonguldak. And in the 1960s, workers gained several political rights, such as union rights, collective bargaining rights, and strike rights. So the Zonguldak miners of 1960s were totally different from the miners of 1940s. In 1940s, there was no any organized labor movement. But when we came to 1960s, miners were really organized and they were really insistent. So between 1965 and 1980, there were at least like 10, 12 strikes in Zonguldak for, again, several reasons, like injustice in salary increases or like bonus distributions or something like that. So for Zonguldak miners, again, they were really organized, and the strikes were the new way of showing their political stance. Okay, now the last section, fall of Zonguldak. My aim is not to try to explain everything with economic indicators, but the economic transformations in this period had a great impact on Zonguldak. But before focusing on the consequence of this economic transformation, namely neoliberalism, let me give you a brief background of neoliberalism in Turkey. The beginning of neoliberalism is considered January 24, 1980 decisions. These decisions aim to reduce the state's role in the market, limit the state-owned enterprises, introduce a free exchange rate system, and in general encourage foreign capital investments. So this was like a basic neoliberal program. And Turgut Özal, here you can see him, was the main architect of January 24 decisions, and he was undersecretary in 1980, but he became prime minister in 1983, and he's generally considered the face of neoliberalism in Turkey, and you can see him with some other faces of neoliberalism in the world, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. So again, this new government was a pure neoliberal government. And as you can imagine, let's say they didn't like the idea that Zonguldak was a state project and state was making huge investments in the place. So they decided to privatize the basin. So they start very slowly reducing investments in Zonguldak, and they were trying to encourage private companies. But sadly, private companies were no longer interested in Zonguldak because, you know, Zonguldak was a state project since 1940, and everything changed during that period. Like energy geographies in the world changed. There were new opportunities for, you know, in different places. So basically, the government, the state, was slowly leaving Zonguldak, and private companies were not filling this gap. By the end of 1980s, the government even considered closing all the mines in Zonguldak, and they were saying because it was no longer profitable. And again, as you can imagine, Zonguldak people were not happy with that, not at all, because first of all, mining was their main economic income, but secondly, it was the state's main identity. I mean, those people didn't have another opportunity in this place. So eventually, the Zonguldak coal miners and their families went on a very large-scale strike between November 1990 and February 1991. As a part of this strike, they even decided to walk to Ankara from Zonguldak, the capital of Turkey, to talk to government face-to-face. And the distance between those two cities, Zonguldak and Ankara, is about 300 kilometers or 180 miles. They walked towards Ankara for 3 days, but then they were stopped, and negotiations started, and they finally decided to go back to Zonguldak. But still, this Zonguldak strike with the Ankara March is considered one of the biggest workers' movement in the history of Turkey. But to be honest, the result is a little ambiguous. I mean, in the end, the mines were not closed, but the government took a different route, and they were reducing investments. They were not recruiting new workers, and so they were also retiring people early. So they were changing the policies in Zonguldak. But I mean, there was no any very strict the consequence of this strike. But again, it was one of the biggest workers' movements at the time. But also let me say that I'm not saying this neoliberal turn was the fault of Turgut Özal's government. It was just the beginning of everything, because subsequent governments did not consider reinvesting in Zonguldak either. So it was just the beginning, and it continued okay, Zonguldak was a state project for decades, and Turkey adopted a neoliberal approach starting from the 1980s and reduced investments in Zonguldak. Private companies did not come to the basin, and they did not take over the mining industry from the state. So what happened to Zonguldak? I will talk about four main things: the number of workers, coal production, population, and the current situation in Zonguldak. Then I will conclude. First of all, the number of workers. You can see the table here. In 1942, the number of total workers in Zonguldak was 27,000 almost. In 1960, it was about 43,000. In 1979, it was about 42,000. And in 1990, it was about 34,000. So there's a basic fluctuation between 1942 and 1990. but we see a steady decrease in the number of workers since 1990. In 2000, it was 19,000. In 2010, it was about 11,000. And right now, it is, I don't have the official data, but it's about 7,000. Okay, I was waiting for this slide to give this information. There are lignite reserves in Turkey, like in different regions, but hard coal is only available in Zonguldak. So in Turkey, hard coal extraction means coal extraction in Zonguldak directly. So what you see here is the saleable hard coal production in Turkey, and it means the hard coal production in Zonguldak and its surroundings. For hard coal production, what we see here is a decline since the mid-1970s. Saleable hard coal production decreased from almost 5,000 in 1973 to almost 1.1 thousand in 2018. But it doesn't mean that overall coal production decreased in Turkey. Here you can see the saleable lignite production in Turkey. It was almost like 7.8 thousand in 1973, and it became 81,000 in 2018. So these two graphics show us that neoliberalism was not necessarily bad for coal production in Turkey, but it was bad for Zonguldak, obviously. And again, the reason for this in this historical process, because it was a state project and the state just left the place. This figure gives us a broader historical framework. That's why I say the rise and the fall of Zonguldak. You can see the rise period here. This is the total production by state company, and this is the saleable production by state company. The difference is about processing coal. So this is the first extraction, the red line, and the blue line is after processing the coal. This is what you have. And the highest production was in 1967 and 1974, I guess. And as you see, starting from 1980s, what we see is like against the decline. And also, you can see private companies came to region in the late 1980s. Before that, there was not a private company, but their coal production never became significant in Zonguldak. Okay, now the population. So on the left, you can see the years, and you can see the population here. And what you see here is the population change. Again, what we see here is a rise and fall. The state's population was about 426,000, 427,000 in 1950. It became 569,000 in 1960. In 1970, it was 744,000. In 1980, it was 955,000. And in 1990, it was 1 million. But then we see a very interesting thing. There's like a huge population loss. And then again, the population starts to decrease in Zonguldak. So let me explain this dramatic change, because of course, like 500,000 people didn't leave the city in 10 years. I mean, that would be interesting, but it didn't happen. The reason is those two cities, Bartın and Karabük, used to be districts of Zonguldak. And the government made them independent cities in 1990s. By the way, for most people from Zonguldak, that was a punishment for Zonguldak strike, because they believe that government, like on purpose, wanted to make Zonguldak a smaller city. So they want to take this industrial center identity from the place. But anyway, we don't know the reason, of course. But Bartın and Karabük became independent cities in 1990s. And when they became independent cities, they included some districts from other cities as well. So we don't know the exact population change in Zonguldak. But what we know is people used to migrate to Zonguldak because it was an industrial center. But starting from 1990s, it turned into a city with a declining population. Okay, final thing, what is Zonguldak doing right now? Is it a totally coal-free place? Well, not actually, it's not. And I mean, coal mining still continues, but comparing to the past, it is not important. But the main thing is, very interestingly and a little bit ironically, Zonguldak turned into a coal importing city, not a coal mining city. Since 2010, several coal-fired power plants have been built or continue to be built in Zonguldak and its immediate surroundings, but they don't use Zonguldak coal. They use imported coal. So you can see the coal-fired power plants. The blue one is the one under construction. Green ones are in operation, and the purple ones are in planning process. And you can see Zonguldak ports, Eren Port, and Zonguldak Port. Okay, let me show you hard coal import, hard coal production, and lignite production graph. So as you can see, hard coal production, this is from 2000. It's almost negligible. It's not important at all. But hard coal import increases, and again, those hard coal, the imported hard coal is used power plants in Zonguldak, mostly in other power plants as well, but mostly in Zonguldak. Let me take a closer look. So this is 2010, 2020, and hard coal production, hard coal import, and hard coal consumption in Turkey. Turkey increased its hard coal consumption from 24,000 to 39,000 between those 10 years. But hard coal production, as you can see, is decreasing. So, of course, hard coal import is increasing. And again, in Turkey, the most hard coal consumption takes place in power plants operating with imported coal. And the one in Zonguldak, Çatalazı coal-fired power plant, has the highest installation power. So, as a summary, while coal production, the number of workers and the population are decreasing in Zonguldak, hard coal imports to the city are increasing. And Zonguldak is actually, Zonguldak already became a coal importer city instead of a coal producer city. That's why I say this is unmaking a coal city or coal mining city. Okay, again, in summary, Zonguldak was a very small village before 1840s, and in 1990, in 150 years, it became an industrial city with a population of 1 million people. Then the city began to lose its main economic activity, which is coal mining, due to the change in economic policies in the country. But once again, I am not saying that neoliberalism is inherently evil. I mean, we might have our reasons to say that, but it's not the finding of this study. The important thing is this: if you, as a state, design a city as a mining city and keep it under state control for decades, it's quite possible that the results will be really bad when you suddenly say, you know what, I'm just living here, just deal with it. But also, I'm not being an economic determinist. I'm not saying that it was inevitable that neoliberalism would cause these problems in Zonguldak. It was quite possible that, you know, the private companies would come to the region and invest there and make this in a very different place. But for one reason or another, it didn't happen. Private companies didn't come to Basin. And at this point, the state had to come up with some alternatives. But that's what we don't see in Zonguldak. So the city was basically abandoned. And currently, the people of Zonguldak are divided into two groups. One group says coal mining should restart in Zonguldak. The state company should recruit new workers and start producing coal again. The other group thinks the city should turn to new alternatives because coal is harmful to the environment and public health, and it's not sustainable. So there's this ongoing debate in the city, but of course, no one knows what will happen in the future. But I know what I will do in the future for this research, because the research I presented today is mostly based on academic studies, digital archive documents, newspaper reports, or biographies, government documents, and so on. But this summer, I am planning to do field work in Zonguldak. So there I will access archive documents that I could not find on the internet, and I will talk to people and listen to their stories about Zonguldak. So that's all. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope I didn't talk too much, but probably I talked too much. These are references I use for this presentation. And yeah, thank you. there's something. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you. So maybe we can open up for questions.
Yeah. How should we do that? Should I check the chat or I mean?
Let's ask people to unmute themselves.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself if you have any questions or like any comments, any contribution.
And questions from the audience.
Yeah. And yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, very interesting your presentations, especially about how you incorporate the conceptual framework of James Scott. So based on that, following that idea, so do you know if there is a strategic planning document for the future of, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it.
Zonguldak, yeah.
Zonguldak, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for the question as well. Right now, they have a project, and I am not sure about the details because they want to turn Zonguldak into a geopark. So because they don't produce coal anymore, but they still all these mines, all coal preparation plants, and the other things about coal mining. So the Zonguldak municipality has a project about this. So they say, maybe we can use this place as a geopark, as a touristic place, so people can come here and visit and see all this old coal mining stuff. That will be good. That will be a good project. And again, I don't know all the details, so I don't want to criticize without information. But I have doubts that like this project, this geopark project, will be useful in terms of, you know, like the economy of the city. I am not sure how much money they can make through a geopark. But as far as I know, this is the main project right now. And other than that, I mean, there were some different attempts because I think it was in 1990s, they established a university in Zonguldak. So they also tried to make Zonguldak kind of university town. It's a kind of big university, but you know, it's difficult to make a state university town in a few decades. So right now, this is the main thing. As far as I know, if they have some secret plans, I have no idea about them.
Thank you.
And Dr. Aslar will share the link on chat about the project. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Hey, Mehmet, can I go?
Yeah, Piero, sure.
So
sure.
thank you. So let me.
Thank you for joining.
So thank you so much for the talk. It was very interesting, especially now I know. I better know what you're doing research on, right? So I think it's on the line of what Anna asked. I wanted to know if, by your opinion, you know, you said that there is some sort of split. The mine should get back. There are people that don't want the mine getting back for some sort of reasons, environmental and health issues. Do you know if the country, like Turkey as a country, or politically parties are trying to, they have some sort of, you know, alternative as a relaunch, economic relaunch for the Zonguldak city, for what you know, or of their other studies?
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, but thank you for bringing this up, because that's a very interesting thing in Turkey, because there's a kind of contradiction. I mean, every country has a different coal policy right now, because in the US, the coal industry is declining, but in China, it is like significantly increasing, and Europe has this coal phase out the program, so they want to totally, you know, stop using coal. They are looking for alternatives. Like the biggest coal producer country in Europe is Germany, and they have like, I don't know, like 5 or 10 years plans for stopping using coal. So in Turkey, it is a little different because Turkey doesn't have oil or gas reserves. So the main thing in terms of fossil fuel is coal. And in the last decade, the government initiates the new program, and the motto is our coal, our energy. So they want to use coal in Turkey because they say this is our main energy source. We don't have anything else. and we want to be independent in terms of energy because we cannot trust energy network. Also, it's a financial burden for Turkey because Turkey is a coal important country. Actually, let me share this because I didn't want to include this slide to my presentation because it was already too long, but yeah, this is the energy imports rate in Turkey from 1960 to the almost present day. And you can see between 1960 to 1980, there was a huge increase in energy imports. And right now, this is like a huge financial burden for Turkey again. So Turkey wants to use coal reserves. But so at first glance, it might seem like it's good news for Zonguldak because Zonguldak is the historical coal extraction center. In Turkey, when you say coal, the first that comes to mind is Zonguldak for sure. But again, Zonguldak has only hard coal reserves, and hard coal is difficult to extract and process. So Turkey makes investments in lignite reserves. So for your question, the answer is, yeah, Turkey makes investments in coal, but not in Zonguldak. There are like different coal-fired power plant projects, and the different, I mean, they are opening new mines around Turkey, but they don't invest in Zonguldak anymore because it is hard coal. It's also kind of related to topography in Zonguldak because it's very difficult to transport coal from Zonguldak to other places.
Okay, thank you so much, Mehmet.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, sure, Dana. I'm not sure if they can hear you, but maybe I can repeat your question.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if it's a question for which we're going to have an answer right now, but I thought it was very interesting that when you started, you spoke about in the theoretical framework about the creation of an identity around, this economic activity. And you were very adamant about pointing out that these are all like economic data that you have at this point, and then there's going to be another aspect to it. So I guess I'm just wondering how much will you look into state policies, not just around the economic activities, but around identities, because you just mentioned, right, the slogan, our coal, our energy. It's also very important instrument in like neoliberal policies that next to economic activities, you develop those identities that sort of justify what you're doing. So I'm curious about how you see yourself going into that as well within this.
Yeah. So basically what you're asking is, as far as I understood, like how about the identity building process with all these economic and political transformations? Yeah, this is also very interesting because there's a concept called resource nationalism, and I'm really interested in that issue because, yeah, as you said, yeah, neoliberalism has to have a discourse. Yes. You cannot just implement neoliberal policies. You have to use a discourse. You have to convince people in a way. So, like, I'm not sure if it's totally relevant to your question, but next year in Turkey, there will be a general election. And the last month, the leader of the main opposition party, Republican People's Party, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, for those who know, he went to Zonguldak. Actually, it was a few weeks ago. So he went to Zonguldak and he was complaining about the mining situation. He was saying, you see, we are importing coal, but we have all these coal reserves in Zonguldak, and there is a huge unemployment problem. So why don't we process coal here? So this is a discourse, because if you look at their political program, they also talk about climate change. They criticize the government because they say, oh, they don't do anything about climate change. So there is that inconsistency in every political party, of course, like in every country. So the discourse change all the time, rhetoric changes, but the real politics and real action, it's just a totally different matter of debate. And I am not sure what will happen in the future, but right now, like in general, if you want to be elected in Zonguldak, you should mention coal. You should say, okay, we are going to change it. Even the current president, Tayyip Erdoğan, says, yeah, we are going to change this. We don't want to import coal. That's why his program is our coal, our energy. But this is just a discourse. When you look at the reality, again, another slide I didn't put in my presentation. yeah, you can see the export and import coal and the Turkey's main coal trading partners. So it's like thousands of dollars. But the discourse is, this is our coal, it's our energy. But in reality, Turkey is just a coal importing country. And there's a question on chat. Sorry about that.
I just assumed that this imported coal has been somehow processed or maybe just burned at the power plants. That was my implicit assumption of the question I asked.
Yeah, it's a process called. So this coal, and when I first saw that, I was really surprised, because right now, like, the biggest main coal trading partner of Turkey is Colombia. So this coal is coming from Colombia, and it's as far as Dana, and as far as I know, like, I'm not 100% sure, but it's a process called, because it directly goes to power plants and they just use it. So again, when I show the number of workers here, those people were they were working the coal production. The real numbers are way higher, because there were so many people who were working the coal mining related jobs, like transportation of coal, or there were people working in the port. So those people also lost their jobs. When you import coal, it's like a process coal, it goes to a power plant directly. So they also lost their jobs. When, like, if they start coal mining in Turkey, in Zonguldak, yeah, everything will change again. But like, I'm not saying Turkey should do that, because, like, I mean, right now it's very difficult to say, okay, we should produce coal like under this climate change condition. But I'm just highlighting the inequality in Zonguldak, the problem in Zonguldak. I honestly, like, genuinely have no idea about any solution. I think we need more time to think about this. And I mean, we should listen to people from Zonguldak at least. Yeah, thank you for the question. Onur has a question.
Hi, Mehmet. Thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. Just let me lower my hand. Yeah. It was really interesting to listen. Again, it's from you. So my question is about the identification and about the social technological imaginaries. So you mentioned that it really took a long while for the government to identify a mining identity to the city and to its citizens, and now it's really hard to make them give up this identity because they see themselves as miners. So you also mentioned that there's a project about making the city, or showing or presenting the city as a museum, as if it's a museum. I'm referring to the project that you said. Yeah, Geopark. So could you maybe do you consider to maybe include any somehow, I don't know, consideration about a re-identification of the city? Maybe there's a process. Maybe there's I don't know. Maybe government has a strategy to re-identify those people, because I can assume that if there isn't any step to re-identify those people and the city, there will be a tension, a political tension, and those people want to maybe react in a really bad way, and this would be I don't know, a shortcoming of this shrinking city. Do you? I don't know if the question just popped up in my mind, so maybe you have.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Well, maybe I mentioned this to you before, but my initial title was Making, Unmaking, and Remaking a Mining City. Yeah. Remaking was referring to the Geopark or other projects, but then I thought that was not a huge project right now, so I just removed that part. Let me just say one thing first. I mean, this identity thing, like, identity building is not only about state. I think people mainly develop their identities. Of course, it is inevitably in relation to the government project, state project, or state policies, but it's mostly up to people. And when I say identity, it doesn't have to be a consistent identity, because when I read interviews or like when I watch videos, like about people from Zonguldak when they talk, what I see is, okay, first of all, they are really happy that they are so proud that they are miners, but also they complain about being miners at the same time. They say because it's a very risky job, it's like working conditions are really bad. And they even say like no one wants to work in such a job, like it's really bad, but also they are really proud that they are miners. So there's this inconsistency. So identity building is a very, I don't know, like messy thing. Like it's very hard to conceptualize. It's very hard to say, okay, these people have this identity, because it can also change very quickly. I mean, when we look at 1940s, people were forced to work in the mines, right? And in 1960s, they were like protesting because they didn't like the salaries. And when it came to 1990s, it was like in 50 years, they were protesting that the government was trying to close the mines. So it is just like it changed all the time. I don't know, but if I need to speculate, like if government or like any private company or somehow if they come up with a new economic program for Zonguldak, it doesn't have to be about mining. I am sure people will be happy with that. I mean, people can change their identities, but I don't know how it will work. But you are right, of course, it's up to government project, but people also can change their identities. Like people can just refuse things. And this is basically what's happening right now, because Zonguldak used to be a labor center, a labor city, but right now it's not. So because there's no job there. I mean, of course there's job, but it's nothing compared to past. There's something in chat. I hope I could answer your question.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Eroğlu. Any questions, any comments? That's all.
Just maybe, I don't know if I can switch on I'll just make a chat.
Yeah.
Message. I think this is it's interesting. This makes me actually think of Eastern Ukraine.
Yeah.
Communities formed around the mining industry, the migration from all over the Soviet Union. The identity that forms is different from the identity of a historical memorial.
Yeah.
It's a special kind of.
I think we can conclude, right?
I think we can. Thank you very much, Mehmet.
No, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us. And I think, yeah, let me just screen. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.